Welcome to the Coming Home Well podcast, the show that educates, supports, and advocates for the veteran community. Your host, Dr. Tyler Pieron, U.S. Army retired, will bring you exciting conversations with amazing guests about resources, research, and military history, all geared to helping our warriors to come home well. Here's your host, Dr. Tyler Pieron.
Welcome to Coming Home Well. I'm your host, Tyler Pieron, and today we are going to be talking to one of the many service organizations that are out there helping veterans do some awesome things, but also helping them save their lives. It's an important and really critical thing. We've all heard the 22 a day. We've all heard all these things about how there's, veterans taking their lives and first responders. But there's a lot of great organizations that are doing something about it. So we have Tony DeMaio. He is the founder and CEO of Helping Heroes USA, which is a fantastic organization. Tony, thank you so much for coming on Coming Home Well and telling us about your organization.
Tyler, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity for us to get our message out. It's an important message. And, as you mentioned, the numbers that get kicked around for the veteran population are somewhere between 22 and we've heard as high as 40 a day, which is tragic. But on a national basis, there's a death by suicide every 11 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's just a staggering number. And in addition to that, there's about 135 people affected every time somebody takes their life. There's coworkers, there's family, there's friends, and it kind of has a ripple effect. So we've gotten into this space. I started back in the suicide prevention space around 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was consulting to an organization called Project Hero. And we did cycling events and bicycles. So we do legs like from San Antonio, Texas to Houston, or Jacksonville, Florida to Atlanta, 1,000-mile rides. We'd have about 200 vets. And the whole purpose of that was to combat isolation. The suicide spiral or spectrum, it was isolation, depression, drugs, alcohol, and then death by suicide. So but having the cycling events was a way to get guys out of the woods, to get them from being isolated, and also to share their stories. So I learned quite a bit at that point, but I felt like there was some holes in what the organization was doing. So in 2017, I started Helping Heroes USA, and it was to really service a broader market and to get more involvement from family and friends. Because in a peer-to-peer situation, you might have a guy whose best buddy is not a first responder, is not law enforcement, it's not another veteran. It's somebody else, maybe it's somebody in the community. So what we're all about is teaching people skills on how to really deal with this issue. So we look at what people are at risk and how to identify somebody's at risk.
Mm-hmm.
We do symposiums, we do workshops. I've got a book coming out that goes through this process, but when you look at it, having statistics is great and you get to maybe identify different industries, but the reality is what do you do? What's the identifier? So looking at somebody that's getting isolated and what are they doing? They're stopping doing any kind of social involvement. They kind of let their personal hygiene go. They don't
Mm-hmm.
share. They let that go. And they just continue to withdraw. At that point, you can see that that's a red flag. So what are some of the drivers that make that happen? Well, for anybody that's in the military, first responders or law enforcement, it could be a horrific event. And they can't shake reliving that event. And as we've worked with, just so many people in that spectrum, it's that continual event, but they don't want to share it with a family member or a loved one. And so what I found is that the ability to engage them in a conversation, a meaningful conversation. So in our world, what we do is we first teach to how to look at people that are at risk. It's number one. Number two is then to take and how to engage in a conversation. And probably the most important thing is to not be judgmental and to be able to listen. Don't try to fix the problem. Don't try to say I can relate. Don't, it's to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll share this with you, and I think this is important. I myself am not a veteran. And so I was a little bit apprehensive about getting into this landscape, thinking, wow, I'm going to be talking to these guys that are veterans, and they're going to go, well, you don't know, you weren't there. And what I found was, and I can remember one of the rides we were doing, we're on his bike and we're riding through the mountains and hills in Las Vegas, and we're out in Las Vegas, out in the desert, and I pull up next to a guy, and I'm brand new at this, and he just starts telling me a story. He did not care what my background, my military service, or anything, and I found that he was kind of grateful that I was just there to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would pull up next to another guy, and they would just tell their story, and I learned, and I started getting confidence that it doesn't really matter what my background is. It's that the listening part is important. So I always bring that up because sometimes it's a barrier for somebody reaching out. I don't want to talk to them because, they're going to tell me I don't understand. And maybe so. Very few out of hundreds and hundreds of people I've ever had somebody say to me, well, you don't understand, you haven't been there. Now, we have a technique for that. If that's true, if you have somebody that's at risk and they take a look at, I don't want to talk to you, you don't understand, reach out and get somebody that understands.
Mm-hmm.
Get another veteran, get another first responder, get somebody in law enforcement. How do you do that? Well, there's a lot of organizations out there that are, there's 12,000 American Legion posts around the country. So wherever you live, there's an American Legion close by. And I guarantee you, and we work a lot with American Legion. If you go there and say, look, I got my dad, my brother, uncle, whatever it is, and I think he's thinking about suicide, and I'm not a veteran, they'll help.
Oh, yeah.
If you roll into a fire station, and there are fire stations all over the place, and say, look, I've got a friend of mine, he's a firefighter, he's retired. Same thing with law enforcement. And then there's organizations out there. So part of the message is you don't have to be the one that is going to carry the burden of trying to work this person through a process. Once you identify, that's tremendous, because now you've identified that a person's at risk. They may have said things that are at risk. There's signs. We have a story where a wife shared with us that her husband, who was in law enforcement, had been decorated and retired, and he started giving away a lot of his medals and possessions. And that's an indicator sometimes. People start giving away things.
Mm-hmm.
Another indicator is they start working on their financial, trying to get their financials in order. Things like that.
These constellation of symptoms and signs
Right.
are important to know. And I think that is one of the things that Helping Heroes USA tries to teach people to recognize.
That's what we preach. We preach trying to get your radar up, try to listen to conversation, try to just identify, just be aware, more aware. My belief is that the way that we're going to mitigate suicide for whatever genre somebody's in is that we're going to empower communities. We're not going to have just peer-to-peer organizations. It's going to be a whole community. Mm-hmm. And so that's what our mission is. Our mission is really to help people get their radar up. One of the worst things we ever hear is, I wish I would have known.
Mm-hmm.
And people carry that guilt for years, 30 years, 40 years. Somebody close to them has, death by suicide, and they're just beat themselves up because they were like, I wish I didn't know. I wish I would have known. I didn't understand the signs. And so what we teach and preach is that we want to create this awareness in the population. One of the cycling events, we would ride on Saturday. Sometimes we'd ride, 60, 70 miles, and you got, 50 guys, and we're loading our bikes in our car. And one of our buddies goes, hey, how about if I take all you guys to lunch? I'm like, what? And then he follows it up with statements just like, this might be the last time we get together. There's a red flag. So about 4 of us jumped on that, and we went to lunch and started to drill down on, just asking questions, not being judgmental, asking a question that is, like, I noticed you're down a lot lately. Well, that's going to get a little pushback. Phrasing a question that says something like, I'm just concerned about you, and I just want to know if everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be surprised how people will be looking for that opportunity to open up.
Oh, yeah.
And just, and so you just listen. So in our world, our phases go identifying somebody's at risk. And then we work with how to engage into a conversation. And then number 3 is how to get additional help, how to refer them out, how to get, somebody else involved. So when we talk about isolation, And we have a lot of groups. There's a ton of groups out there, things you can do. We use cycling as one of the ways. We use golf. We have golf clinics where just maybe you guys never golf, but we get them out to a driving range and we got the teaching pros out there and they're chipping and putting and just having fun. But just getting them connected and keeping them out of that isolation. There's a lot of groups that are just Tuesday morning, 10, 15 vets at McDonald's having coffee, right? So it doesn't have to be a huge elaborate thing. It's just something that you can get people out and just keep them involved. One of the things that we talk about in our symposiums and seminars is, and I learned this from my dad. He didn't know he was teaching me, but my dad lived to be 90. My mom died at 75. So all those years he was alone. And one day I just realized that, you know what? He hasn't talked to anybody else but me for like 5 days. And I'm the only one that he's talking to. And then he had this ritual of every Wednesday he would go get his car washed and put it back in the garage. But that was his way of getting out and getting contact. And he wouldn't take direct deposit. He would get his check, his pension checks, and he'd go to the bank because that was his contact way. So what I've learned is that a lot of times I live in a 55 plus community. We have a couple golf courses here and everything. And I know you're thinking to yourself, Tyler, how did you get in 55 plus? But I just made it. But
I'm 50, so I hate to say it, but I know the feeling.
So I have a service dog and I walk him every morning for about an hour and a half. And what I realized is I had people come up to me and now I see them almost every day and they start a conversation and I'm thinking to myself about, this might be the only person that I might be the only person they talk to. And you can kind of tell sometimes, and they're kind of going through this conversation. So one of the things we work and we just encourage people to be more compassionate and have the radar up and just listen to what people are telling you and listen without judgment. So that's one real big component for us is looking at the risk factors. We're a community that we're not too far from 29 Palms Marine Base. So we have a lot of guys that have been deployed. You have a lot of guys coming back. And one of the things I started to realize was that you have some young guys that come back and maybe they have PTSD and they're having a hard time finding a job, but they're also having a hard time in their marriage. They end up going down the path of divorce. Then they get involved in child custody battle. And now they're dealing with the VA trying to get all their benefits. So there's this compounding effect that just puts pressure on them. And it's not just one event. It sort of becomes just this compilation of events that pushes down on people.
It's fight after fight after fight.
Right. And they start to think there's no way out. There's no way out for me. And so listening to that, being involved, we have a guy we were working with, and on the day that he was going to get the news about his child custody, we just took him to an event. He had nothing to do with the event. We were going to be driving to Orange County, which is about an hour and a half drive. And I said, hey, why don't you come with us? We're just going to hang out down there. And it was like, okay, because we knew that day he was going to get that call. And if it was bad, it could be the one thing that pushed him over. So these are just things that we just wanted to let people know. I mean, there's no rocket science, huge thing that we're doing here. But it's just that it's not, you don't learn it anywhere. There's not like a course in school. There's nothing that people teach you and say, here are some of the signs. And we have a problem. We have this suicide problem in our country that's taking a life every 11 minutes. It's the number 10 or however you look at the numbers, it's the number 10 or 11th disease in our country, factor of death. So, and we've seen an increase over the years. So things that are being done, and I've got a little bit of a pet peeve where we've thrown a lot of money out of research, and we're researching, there's grants and millions of dollars going to grants, but it never trickles down to the people that are going to really engage with people. So that's what our mission is. And everything we do, our symposiums, our workshops, they're all free. So we don't want the financial barrier. Somebody says, really depressed, they really looking for a way out, and then they can't afford $20 or $50 to come to an event. So we're just taking that away. So we've got great sponsors that help us fund our project. One of the reasons why I wrote the book, not only get the message out, but that helps with revenue, to do what we do. So there's no charge to it. In a depression, we start to have people that are really depressed. One of the things to do is to just get them out, but get them to move a little bit. They sit on the couch, they're just withdrawn, and it's just drags them down. So any kind of a routine, getting them to get out and walk for 5 minutes and 10 minutes, um, those are things that will just help. Get them to set some little goals. If they can have some little accomplishments every day, it might be, getting out of bed for the day, but, something that is not really, impactful, but they can get started and then they can increase those goals. So there's kind of a process to getting people out of depression. We have people that suffer with TBI, traumatic brain injury, and some of the frustration around TBI is that you have memory loss and your functionality isn't there. So you start to become frustrated, and that causes depression because you go, I used to be able to do this, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, it could be something simple. Myself, my background, I really came out at life as a football coach. I was a football coach, played football, had a lot of concussions. And then in cycling, I had a couple of spills, but the last one I had, they found me unconscious in the street, and I had TBI, and that's why I'm a service dog. And so I went through that process. I couldn't remember phone numbers. It's very frustrating. And I would look at the
And you
numbers.
used to know it, you used to be able to, and the fact that
Yeah.
you used to be able to recall it sharply is probably the most frustrating part.
It is. So helping people walk through that, because there are ways to brain train all over again, do things that are just helping you day after day, repetitive, that'll help you get some of that back. So we talk about those things. We try to help people look at their community and people that they know and say, who's at risk? We see a lot of where you have partners that have been married for 50 years. And all of a sudden one partner dies. The other person starts to spiral. They're going into isolation, depression. And, how do you deal with that? So some of the questions I get sometimes is, I have somebody that lives, 4 states away. What am I going to do? So we have a phone. Get them on the phone, set up, you talk to them today and say, okay, I'm going to call you on Thursday, I'm call you on Wednesday, whatever it is. And then maybe see somebody local or a local event they can get into, or refer them to somebody. Try to help them. Even though they're away from you, they're not right there immediate to you, there's still ways that you can reach out and help.
One of the things that we talk a lot on this program is find your purpose, find your tribe. And people that are getting out of the military, people that are suffering a loss like 50 years of being married, or some other big life change, or, things are just sort of spiraling down. If you're isolated, that's when bad things happen. And finding your purpose, when you're in the military, you know what you're doing, you know everybody around you. Even if you don't know them well, you're on the same team.
Right.
Well, when you get out, or you're no longer in active service, or you're getting divorced, or fill in the blank, you may not have that tribe around you. But getting out and doing things, my father-in-law, for instance, my mother-in-law passed, and we kind of worried about him, but he goes out every morning to breakfast with what we call the brain trust. And it's, like 7 or 8 guys, and they meet for breakfast at various places. And they meet up for like an hour, hour and a half every day, except for the weekends. And I think that's really important for him, but it's also important for anybody to have that tribe. Someone will notice that you're not there. And these are the type of things that it sounds like you're talking about, finding that purpose to go do something and having that tribe of people you can go talk to.
No, absolutely. The other thing is to, when we talk to family members, is to support that person doing that. So a lot of times we hear something, and a message really resonated with me. I said, I never knew all the things my dad did in the military. He would never share it with us. At his funeral, the guys from the Legion Hall came down and they were telling us all these stories. Well, he felt comfortable sharing it with those buddies down there. And so the message is here is to encourage. Don't be somebody that's, hey, don't be a Debbie Downer. Don't be like, don't go, you don't need to go to breakfast every day. You don't need to. I can relate to where my sisters were they would tell my dad, you need direct deposit. You can't go into the bank. It's not safe. That was his event. That was his way out of the house. So you're absolutely right. All these little things, all these things that people do is if you're on the sideline, encourage them. And we talk about this. We bring things out. Stories like you have, And the more stories we accumulate and we can share with other people, the more we can help people identify somebody that's at risk and then what the steps are to help them.
So let me ask a few questions about Helping Heroes USA.
Sure.
And the website, folks, is super easy to find. It's helpingheroesusa.org. And we'll put it in the show notes so you don't have to write it down if you're driving. But where are you located? Where do you guys do your services? Are you mostly in California? Do you do other things throughout the country?
Where we are, we're in California. We're in Palm Springs, Palm Desert. There's only 150 golf courses down here, so it's a good place
In
to
the middle
land.
of the desert. That's
Yeah.
where I expect golf courses to be.
Yeah, right. So we're for us, we've done a lot of these symposiums in different American Legion or VFW posts
Hmm.
for smaller groups. So this year, second half of the year, we started to launch more symposiums in a public setting, like we have one coming up at the Palm Springs Air Museum.
Oh, nice.
We're reaching a broader reach. The other thing that's happened is we're starting to work with associations, and the construction industry, they're at high risk. There's a lot of suicides in the construction industry.
Hmm.
So we're working with the Association of Builders and Contractors, and we're doing symposiums at their corporate. They have regional corporate offices that hold about 75 people. So we're now going out into these venues to be able to spread the word, so to speak. We still are working and doing some symposiums at larger Legion halls. We have one coming up at Newport Beach, which is the second largest American Legion post in the country. So to answer your question is right now, our outreach is in Southern California, but we're moving it more on a national basis. One of the reasons that we've decided to go to the webinar is to be able to take and throw a broader net. And then that's one of the reasons I think I was driven to write the book, was to get out. It's difficult to do symposiums all around the country. It's a big machine. I think we'll evolve with that. I've got a background in that. But for right now, I think the fastest way to get the word out is what we're doing now. Having people like yourself, Tyler, inviting me onto a podcast so that we can reach out to folks and give our message. And what we're doing today is it's like a 40,000-foot view of what we really do.
Yeah.
And people drill down and we do things about listening skills. One of the hardest things for people is to listen. It's just they want to fix the problem. And from what I found over the years is guys want to share the problem. They don't necessarily want you to fix it, right? And
It took me until about I was 45, I think, when somebody said, "Do you want me to solve this problem or do you want me just to listen?" And I was kind of floored because I've always been, hey, if you're sharing a problem, there's a reason it's a problem. Let's fix it.
yeah.
And it was a whole different paradigm for me. And I've been trained in suicide prevention and mental health and all these things. And in that context, it made sense to listen. But in other contexts, I'm always, hey, I'm a problem solver. And that's why
Right.
you're coming to me with a problem.
Right, exactly. My saying is, and I've owned a lot of businesses, I've been fortunate over the years, is if it got to my desk, it meant that nobody else in the food chain could solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's at my desk. So it's hard to diffuse that. One of the things, though, that healing for somebody is being able to tell that story in a safe, non-judgmental environment. One of the things that we would do is after events, especially in the cycling world, we would take and we'd be having a barbecue that night. We got 150, 200 people there.
That's a
And
big barbecue.
it's a big barbecue, that's for sure. And one of the hardest things was scheduling hotels. It's interesting. As we would schedule, we'd ride across the country. The hardest thing was finding hotels. We had enough ADA rooms. We had guys that were amputees, double amputees, on hand crank bikes and stuff. That's a whole other story. But the healing part is the sharing. And we would have maybe 3 or 4 people every night share their story. And a lot of times it was really surrounded about an atrocity that happened that they just haunted them and they couldn't shake it. And they didn't want to share it with anybody. But that environment, they felt safe. The other thing we find is sometimes people that have been deployed, they come back and they have been asked to do something that goes against their moral conscience. And it's part of war. It's part of what they are asked to do, and those type of things really grain on them. And working with them and listening, and then maybe getting them professional help. We're a big proponent of, you don't need to be the one. You don't need to be, you've done your job. If you've identified it and you can help somebody get help, then that's a great job. So don't feel the burden of having to go through. The other thing that we talked about is, if you're identified, you've got a loved one, you've identified it, you've done the things, you've seen them get depression, and something causes them to finalize it, to commit suicide. That's extremely tough for the person that I'll call the caregiver. That person almost becomes a candidate. And so working with them and letting them know that, there was a turning point where that person just decided that no matter what, they were going to take their own life, whatever was the driver. Sometimes it could have been chronic pain. Just couldn't live with the pain anymore. And so a lot what we do is support that caregiver person. We talk about that. And we've got one of our workshops coming up in September is heavily focused on that and getting new information out about that caregiver. Now there is a good stat, and one of the stats is that when somebody is identified at risk and there's involvement from the family and friends, they save about 85% of the people. So 100% is what you want, but that just shows you that being involved. So things that people think are reasons why they shouldn't be involved. There's a stigma out there. There was a thing going around. So look, if you bring up suicide to somebody, they're going to start thinking about it, and they're going to freak. They're going to take their life.
Yeah, that myth's been around for decades.
Yeah.
You are not introducing the idea to them in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you're right on. You're spot on. And so, but even sometimes the problem is that people that are in a community, let's say you're part of a healthcare community, and you know all the buzzwords, you know everything. We're reaching out to people that aren't. It's a bigger population that aren't.
Right.
So all of a sudden somebody says to me, well, I don't want to bring it up because that might cause them. I'm like, well, wait a minute. No, that's not it. And to you thought, well, I've heard that for decades, like you said, but for them, that's new. Really? Yeah, no, you're not gonna bring it up and cause somebody to take their life. Don't worry about that. It's better off to bring up the subject, see if they really are at risk. And the other thing is, what's the timeline? Is it urgent? Is it like, man, they've been thinking about it and they're looking at ways to do it? And one of the things we talk about is firearms. Firearms are in probably 70% of suicides. It's the number one cause of death. So if you've got a family member or friend and they've got a gun, maybe there's a way you can get that thing locked up in a safe. Maybe there's a way that you can get a friend take it for a while. But those are things that, we really need to work with, and just creating awareness and talking to people, listening to their situations or problems. For us, listening to families and loved ones that think they have somebody at risk and how to coach them to get around. That's our mission at Helping Heroes USA.
So who are you training? That would be my next biggest question is, are you training the family members? Are you training professionals? Who's coming to Helping Heroes USA to get trained to identify and assist the people that may be at risk?
Great question. We have a thing, and you see it up on my logo on my backdrop, support angels. We want to create support angels. And what we're looking at are family members, friends. There's a story that says it takes a village to raise a child. So my belief is it takes a community to save a life. Reaching out to the folks, we're not going to train professionals. We want to become a bridge between that person and the professionals. In other words, if we can identify somebody and then get a professional involved, encourage them to call the suicide hotline. They do a great job. They can usher them over. You have 988 and you press 1, it's for veterans. Just being there to help them through that process. That's who we're dealing with. It's just incredible to me, and the stories that I hear of people that have had somebody in their network or close, and they're still carrying around that. I wish I would have known. I just wish I would have known what to do. I wish I would have known they were at risk. And we want to eliminate that. So from my viewpoint, the masses that we can reach are going to help mitigate this problem. And that's what we're training. We're not trying to create healthcare professionals. That's not it. We're looking at people that are close to people. There's a lot of disparity out there. There's a lot of people that are just being driven by financial. There's a whole younger segment of folks now that are having a problem with bullying. They're being bullied,
Mm-hmm.
not only in school, but also cyberbullying, and have your radar up. So we listen to that. In that senior network, there's the loneliness, but there's also chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
Also for veterans and first responders too, people that have physical wounds, there's a chronic pain issue. And one of that problem that comes with that is medicating. That's one of the things to look at is somebody stockpiling prescription medication. That's a family member. That's maybe looking in there in the bathroom and they say, wait a minute, you haven't been taking this, and they're stockpiling that because they're looking to create that event where they, take their life.
So I had a quick question. What percentage would you say, I'm just spitballing, that attend your classes are actually worried about someone in their network and they don't know how to handle it, so they are looking for some training, perhaps because there's something that's sort of festering and they want to do something about it? And what percentage are, hey, I just want to do this training in case I ever see it?
Yeah, great question. I don't really have. I can give you my feeling on that.
Yeah. Anecdotal. I don't expect,
It's a hard survey,
peer-reviewed research.
Yeah, it's a hard survey. I think the other part of that question is sort of three prongs. So what percentage of people are sitting there that are thinking about taking their own life? They're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about a suicide path, which is a very high percentage of our population. So I believe that just by people we get feedback and talk to, I think there's a percentage of people that think they have somebody in their network. It's a high percentage.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that, and part of that question is, there's also a percentage of people that have had somebody in their network and they still have a guilt feeling of, I wish I would have known, and now they want to be equipped in case it comes across the radar again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another one. And I think there's also a group of folks out there that are just compassionate, community minded. And it's sort of like taking a CPR class, you don't know anybody that's going to need CPR right away, but I'm equipped if I do.
Yeah.
So it's a great question. I think that the CPR class analogy is probably the smallest percentage that we have. I think the percentage of people that we have that are actually thinking about it or coming to our event is probably a small percentage. I think there's a large percentage of people that have somebody in their world, father, brother, sister, cousin, somebody, business associates. We just got a call a couple of days ago, a project my wife's working on, that one of the women in the project, she's in Chicago, and they were getting ready for a Zoom, and she called and said, my son just died by suicide.
Oh, wow.
And so there's sort of a ripple, right? So I think the more people that we can affect, that would be aware, they weren't aware, it's somebody we just started working with, and they didn't see any of the signs. But really, I think the message is really looking at some of those signs out there. And once you're aware of it, you kind of go, oh, they are getting isolated. They're not returning phone calls. They're not showing up at the events anymore. They really do look depressed. There's something going on, or they've just had a big financial loss, or they've lost a loved one. Those kind of things. And just reaching out, just being not judgmental, just saying, I really care about you. I just want to have this conversation because I care about you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard thing for some guys to say, but it isn't. It isn't. I'll tell you, coming out of my coaching career, I was the kind of guy that was suck it up, like that wound is.
You've just described 98% of the military.
Absolutely. That wound is like 3 feet from your heart. So rub some dirt on it. And when the bell rang for me, it was the day that the one buddy of mine just said, it might be the last time we get together. Let's go to lunch. I was like, whoa, that was a turning point. I just realized, man, I've been passing up people my whole life.
Yeah.
So they had some
Well,
great,
you don't recognize it. I mean, hindsight's 2020. Yeah. And then you're like, oh yeah, when you get the training about what are all the signs and symptoms and things, because in isolation, every one of them might be just one thing. But it's when these constellation of signs and symptoms all start coming together, you recognize that it may be a problem if you're aware of it, and you have the forethought to like, hey, what might this one thing be? Might be nothing. When you have 5, 6, 7, 3, 4, whatever the number is, and all of a sudden you're like, ooh, that might be an issue.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on. The other thing is that we want to make it so that it's not so difficult. If you think you have somebody at risk.
Mm-hmm.
You just engage in a conversation. There's just a lot of networks out there to get support. So don't feel like, oh no, somebody's at risk and I'm going to take the burden. I'm going to be, and what if I fail? It's just going to pure failure. It's like, no, just the fact that you realize it and you can help them get help. That's a huge step forward. And the more people that we can empower to do that, that's what we want to do.
So I just want to make sure I summarize what Helping Heroes USA is doing. You guys are providing a lot of suicide and other training and a lot of events out there, primarily in California, but you're doing the webinars now. So anybody across the country can tune in and watch and get trained on the signs and symptoms and the training that's being provided. And there's no cost. So if you're interested in doing the training, there's no cost at all. And let me see. When are you doing these? Obviously, they're online. So can you do them anytime or are they scheduled?
We're putting together a schedule right now of webinars. The symposiums, like we have one next week. We have a
Mm-hmm.
symposium for the Association of Builders and Contractors. Then I think the next one is the public one's in November, and then we're already scheduling January, February, March. The webinar component, we're in the process of putting that together, and that's going
Mm-hmm.
to simultaneously go with the book release, which I think is 2, 3 weeks away.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
the book release, it's Silent Battle, and it's for family and friends. It's a support guide, and it's written speaking to family and friends. Now, if somebody is at risk and they pick it up, it's gonna help them too. But part of our mission is just to really be able to help the families. I've done a lot of work with Gold Star moms and talking to them, and it's just a sad it's talking to somebody that's been down that path, and there's sort of a division with the Gold Star moms. There's uh, kids that have been killed in combat, and there's ones that have come home with such atrocities they've decided to take their own life when they're home. There's kind of a divide there, and we've talked to both groups, and just getting the training out, just getting reaching more people. I guess that's my message. If we can reach tens of thousands of people, maybe we can put a dent in this growing. It's growing, and even if it's not huge. For example, suicide amongst women the last 2 years has grown 4%.
Mm-hmm.
So that means we haven't fixed the problem of the base, and yet now we've got 4% increase on that. So we need to
Yes.
empower more folks, right? And you're helping us. You're helping us get the message out. I appreciate that. And if people come and contact us at helpingheroesusa.org, they can get a message to me or staff, and we're willing to work with them.
So, Tony, I've asked you a bunch of questions, and you've done a wonderful job telling us all about Helping Heroes USA and the website. Go check it out, folks. Fantastic organization that's making a difference. I have asked you a bunch of things. You've told me a bunch of things, but I'm sure there's something I should have asked you about, but haven't. So, what should I have asked you, Tony? And I didn't.
I think probably when I think about that is the message I try to give out. My background as a football coach. I mean, that's
Hmm.
what it was, and I was very fortunate. I had a business that I was blessed, and I was able to get out and do a lot of entrepreneurial things. But I think my message is that just real folks out there. You don't need to have a medical degree. You don't need to be a PhD. You don't. It's reaching out and I have a very strong faith, and I think that belief is something that we see that helps people. Belief in God and believe that His promises. His promises are, no matter how dark the situation is, His promises to get you out of that at some point. And if you can approach that darkness as a learning piece, it's a part you're going through your life. It's almost a training for something else, and that's a hard pill. But that's part of His promises, and so believing in that. I had a business partner one time, great guy, died too young. He was part of the Gideons. And the
Mm.
Gideons are the ones that put the Bibles in the hotels. And John had a lot of stories, but one story really stuck with me. It was a woman that went into a hotel. She booked a room, she sat in the hotel, took out a gun, and there was a Gideon Bible laying on the nightstand. She picked up the Bible and started reading it. She never read the Bible. She started understanding what God's promises were and started really thinking about maybe a purpose for her life. Put the gun away, checked out of the hotel room, and she actually called the Gideons to tell them, I want to become a part of this to save my life. So we do talk about faith a lot. We talk
Hmm.
about what God's promises are, and we talk about the dark times, um, Jesus said, God said, it's not just once you become and you believe in me, it's not like your life's going to become a bed of roses, right? There's going to be challenges every day. And we're just going to give you some tools to help deal with those challenges. And I'll tell you, there's an incredible impact on somebody. If you ever just tell somebody, you know what, I'm praying for you.
Mm-hmm.
I have people telling me, they go, well, I'll keep my fingers crossed. I go, don't do that, pray. It's so it's very uplifting, and it's one of the ways that people need to know, not only, the old story about, they need to know that you care, but to feel that there is somebody out there on their team. One of our little slogans, I guess, is you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
They care about you. We got a bunch of folks out there that care about you. And, you think, well, the world's going to be better without me, and, I'm a burden. And, that's sort of that victim thought process. And we teach, there's a cycle. It's called victim, persecutor, rescuer. So what happens is you become a victim. Woe is me, things are happening to me, and da 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 da. And then all of a sudden you become a persecutor. You start lashing out at people because you're so ticked off because you've been this victim. Then after you've lashed out at people, you feel bad about that. So you become a rescuer. You start, let's just say, kissing their butt for them. You're like,
yeah,
oh, sorry.
Trying to fix it.
Yeah. And so there's that cycle, and we try to help. We talk to people about it because if you see somebody in that cycle, well, how do you break it? You just kind of go to where they're at, and you got to go back to where the victim is, and not let them be a victim. That victim is what slips them into the isolation, depression. So, I know we're kind of running up on time here, and I'm sorry for that, but we have a lot.
Oh, no worries. This is a wonderful message, and what a wonderful organization.
And so we want to help folks. That's our mission. We have a lot of things that we work with. I appreciate you, giving this overview of what we do.
Yeah, there's a lot more that you guys do, and folks, go check out helpingheroesusa.org. It's a great website. It's easy to navigate. You can find the most recent events. You can go schedule things. When the book comes out in a few weeks, hopefully we'll have the links down below with the book and to the webinars. You can go register, go get the book, go do the things. This is wonderful training. The military requires this type of training every year for every service member. However, that wasn't always the case, and it hasn't been that long that it's been ongoing. But they recognize the need for the active duty forces, but there is no analog for the people that are no longer serving, as no training like this for the fire department or the first responders or anybody else in your life. Very rare is it for somebody to have the CPR type of training. Hey, you may need it when it happens. So go check it out. It's a fantastic organization. And Tony, thank you so much for sharing everything you're doing, and really for everything you are doing on behalf of all of us that are serving, have served, first responders, and everybody else that you have been assisting.
So thanks for giving me the opportunity and the exposure that we can just get our message forward. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us on Coming Home Well.
Thanks for joining us this week on Coming Home Well with Dr. Tyler Pieron. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and a review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well, this is Coming Home Well.